Hi everyone, I'm Alexander Zeitlin. This is the Lockdown Lecture Series for Beginner Violin, adapted from the Alias Music Introductions course for violin, but adapted for the classroom setting. Let's jump into Lesson 2. Alright, so last week we learned how to play the third, second, first finger on each string, ascending and descending. We learned that it had two positions and higher and lower position. And we also learned how to hold the violin. So today we're going to take a look at using those skills to essentially play notes. So what I have up here on the screen is every note that you can play, almost every note, in first position, meaning that your hand is in its regular position on the violin. It's a lot of notes. You can play notes from the low notes all the way up to high notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you essentially a code for how to play each of these notes with your strings and fingers. So this low note, 0, then 1, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 1. And this is 0, 3, 2, 3, 1. Oops, I missed the string. There we go. A3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0. All right. So basically what that means is, and right now, normally with my private students, I'm kind of more of a positional analytical thinker. I want everyone to understand note reading before we start, but for the classroom setting, I'm going to teach you guys how to do this stuff first, and then I will recommend a few tools later for kind of getting used to reading notes. Now, but basically what this means is if I want to play this note right here, for example, that just means that I would play the second finger on the A string right here in order to play that note. If I want to play this note right here, I would play E0. So E0 with no strings, with no fingers gets me that note right there, and so on. Now, last week we did talk a little bit about, let me see if I can pull it up. Here's some of last week's notes. The second finger having two positions, a lower and a higher position. And we indicate this with arrows in our finger marking. So for example, if I wanted you to play A2 with a higher position, I would just draw like an up arrow, and that means play, again, this one. I know it looks like it's lower on the chart, but it goes towards the higher numbers, so that's higher. If I wanted you to play A2 lower, I would draw a down arrow, and that means you play this position closer to the first finger. I'll demonstrate all that in just a moment. But we go back to our scale. During the beginner course, I will not teach you guys necessarily how to figure out higher or lower positions. That will have to be written in by a teacher or a coach, but I will write them in right now because it's part of the combination of how to play all these notes. So all the arrows come to the second fingers right now, because right now the first and third finger are just on their regular positions, and they can also be in higher and lower positions, but for now they're just going to be in the regular positions. So what I find is that when you're starting, it's sometimes nice to just read through it in your own mind, just so you kind of see everything you'll have to tackle. So you also notice that I only write down the strings when they change. So for example, this is G0, G1, G2, G3, and then D0, D1, D2, D3. So just mentally kind of follow along with me. It's going to be G0, G1, G2 higher, G3, D0, D1, D2 higher, D3, A0, A1, A2 lower, A3, E0, E1, E2 lower, back down to E1, E0, A3, A2 lower, A1, A0, D3, D2 higher, D1, D0, G3, G2 higher, G1, and then G0. So if you're tackling something new and you're really new at reading fingerings, it's playing it is its own difficulty, but tracking and not getting lost is also its own challenge. So this way you can follow along and just mentally be prepared for how long you have to concentrate for, and also helps you not get lost. So let's do it. I will get set up here just like I will every time I pick up my instrument. So grab the body, I put it on my left shoulder, turn, chin down, thumb in the right position. I get my fingers just above the stickers, but I don't need to put them down yet because I start with G0. So I pluck G0, I pluck G1, G2 higher, G3, and then D0, D1, D2 higher, D3, A0, A1, A2 lower, A3, E0, E1, E2 lower, E1, A3, sorry, E0, now A3, A2 lower, A1, A0, D3, D2 higher, D1, D0, G3, G2 higher, G1, G0. Now, I know plucking generally is not as loud as bowing will be, and we will get to the bow here shortly. But let me just play it once with the bow so you can hear what you will be playing when you're plucking. So it sounds like this. This is known as our G major scale. A scale is generally all the notes in order, and a major scale particularly creates a certain thing of musical meaning, and we will learn exactly what that is a little bit later. The cool thing is, you now have a handy chart along with your scale with essentially like every note that you could play, and you can now start to decode other music. So for example, just below it, you'll see on the screen is Mary Had a Little Lamb. I've chosen some nursery songs for you guys to work on, mostly because you all know what they sound like. So if you play a wrong note, you'll know that, oh, that's not what Mary Had a Little Lamb sounds like. So we will get to cooler pieces soon, but let's start with some simple stuff. So I look at this note, and generally, for those of you who have not read music before, the most important thing about music is the note head. Like, that's what we look for our notes. That's what tells us what note it is. Don't worry right now, the line here is called the stem. The 5 lines we write music on is called the staff. These are our 5 lines. And notes can generally go either on the lines or on the spaces. So like here's a note on the line and here's a note on the space. And generally, like as the notes go up, line, space, the notes would sound higher and higher, one note at a time, and lower would be vice versa. And if they were to skip from like a line to a space above it, that means that it skipped several notes and went up several notes. And generally the notes will move forward, like forward through the staff is forward through time. So like just like we would read, you would read one note at a time. And then notes can be different in terms of their length, and that's described by their a few things about them, like whether they have a black head or a white head or a stem or a tail, but we will also go over that a little bit later. But for now, let's take the first note, which is on, you can see the second from the top space, right? So like we look at these spaces in between the lines, and it's almost at the top space. So if I look for that note over here, I find it right there. There it is on that space. I look down and I see, that's second finger on the A string, so I'm going to write A2. Now again, you guys don't know your arrows yet. I will just have to write those down. Write in the arrows for the entire piece. So, and you guys can right now copy this onto your page. Everything I've written down, including that scale, you guys can all copy onto your page. More drawing with the mouse. Still one of my least favorite things. One of my students recommended I get one of those drawing pads, and I totally will. I'm getting to it. almost there. Got 2 more second fingers to draw. They're all higher second fingers, and I'm just going to draw all the up arrows to make sure you guys don't miss any of them. Okay, so anyway, let's go back to figuring out our notes. So the next note, looks like it goes down 1. The note head goes down 1 to the middle line. So I find the middle line right here. That's going to be first finger on the A string. I'm just going to draw a 1. I don't need to draw an A because I'm already on the A string. It goes down another 1. So that goes down 1 here to a 0. So I'm just going to draw a 0 because we're already on the A string. It goes right back up to this middle line. So there is the 1 right here. Okay. And then it goes up again to this space. I've already had that. That's the same as A2. So I have A2, A2, A2 is the same. So there's the first 2 bars. This is a bar line, by the way. It separates our music into bars. First 2 bars of Mary Had a Little Lamb. And if I pluck it, again, I'm just kind of going to read it to make sure I'm ready to track it. A2 higher, A1, A0, A1, A2 higher, A2 higher, A2 higher. Let's try to see what it sounds like. So A2 higher, A1, A0, A1, A2 higher, A2 higher, A2 higher. Okay? Just so you guys hear what it sounds like with the bow, it sounds like this. Okay? Bow is something we will get to shortly. We can start to set it up a little bit at the next lesson. So today we learned about the proper fingering for a G major scale and how to start decoding music with various fingerings. So to prepare for the next lesson, you should decode the rest of Mary Had a Little Lamb. So you've got 2 lines to work on. So you should finish writing in your strings and fingerings. And then I recommend practicing each day that you practice your scale 3 times plucking and Mary Had a Little Lamb 3 times plucking. And that will do it for lesson 2. See you guys all in lesson 3.